Okay, so this may be the last time I do a video here, depending on if I do one tomorrow or not. We got more time added on to the dog watching time. It was supposed to be done on Wednesday. It is now Thursday. And it was cheaper for my brother and his daughter to fly back on Saturday than it was to rent a car. So here we are. It'll be fine. Been kind of a weird week. I was kind of heavy at the beginning of the week. Bunch of stuff not panning out ideally. I think it was Monday night. I went to bed and just had this overwhelming urge to cry and ended up doing that. And then had to stop and spend some time journaling and getting some stuff out of my system that I was just kind of hanging on to. There was this intense sense of anxiety that hit. It was me and my brother both, so we were talking. The people that want to buy their house want to buy the house, and they are set to close on July 17th. Today is the 3rd, and then on the 18th they close on the house they want to buy next to her brother. So good things for them. I've talked a lot about how I feel like once things start picking up, they're gonna go pretty quick. And I guess we're kind of, I've said for a while that I feel like them moving is kind of like the start of the things that are changing, and like the start of the things moving quickly. So very much that. My brother said he thinks they will probably be going to Oklahoma on the 13th or 14th. So, yeah, so it's a little... we both just... when we were talking about it the other day, it's just that sense of anxiety hit, and it was, the conversations that'll have to be had, and, dealing with the parents and whatnot. And, yeah. Just the anticipated anxiety of the things. Of course, I'm sure my mom will want to spend a ton of time with Gracie before they move, which makes sense, but also, hopefully there's no drama on that end. I don't know. That's what it is. Kind of weird thinking about this could be the last time I hang out with these goofy little... You look so happy though. And this one. So that's been kind of weird too. They're content right now, though, so we just got done with our walk a little bit ago. Yeah, there's just been, like, all these things, too, that are just, like, when I've tried to get ahead of something, it's like something else comes right in and, like, kind of shoves me off balance a little bit. Like, one thing that came up was Monday was the 30th, and I realized that my storage unit payment was due, and I didn't have any money in the bank account. So I mentioned to my brother and sister-in-law, sent them a message, told them how much I wanted for the thing, like for the whole time since they were gone. I said through Wednesday, I said if anything happens beyond Wednesday, expect more, but through Wednesday, this number. And then I said, if you could possibly go ahead and send me some of that, that would be great, because I realized there were a couple things that were due at the end of the month that I forgot were due at the end of the month. Well, I knew they were due at the end of the month. I just it didn't register that the end of the month was that close. So I said they would, and they did not that day. They sent it the next day. And then as soon as I saw that it had come through, I jumped on to pay the storage unit because obviously my stuff's there, so I'm kind of more concerned about that one than some of the other stuff. And when I went to pay it, it wouldn't go through. It's like I asked for more than what it was going to cost for the storage unit, because I wanted to pay that and these other things. And then, like the other things came out automatically. Something else. It's one of those things where you try before you buy, but they make sure the money's there, and they I don't know, put a freeze on it to make sure it's still there and they can access it when, the trial run is up or whatever. I didn't anticipate it was going to go through that quickly before I actually got paid. And it did. And it was fine. I ended up borrowing some money from my mom and throwing it into the bank account. It's like, look, I have this. But the silly thing was like I told her, I was like, I had this thing come out that I completely forgot about, and it bumped me, so I didn't have enough. It was just okay. The storage unit is 83. What I had in the bank account at that point that wouldn't go through was 82.20. It's like, are you fucking kidding? So anyway, it's all handled. But it was like there was a series of things that came to just kind of like get in the way and kind of knock me off balance, and it was just so frustrating. It's like there was just multiple things like that, and it was like, a couple of them were like bank account things, but then like one, I was like going to get in line at the ATM and someone cut me off. It's like that kind of stuff. So it was like a series of getting cut off, but by different things in my life, and most of it was I set it up where it was possible for that to happen, so it was like my fault, but still it was like, well, shit. So there's just a bunch of stuff to be really aggravating. But yeah, when Monday night, there was just so much going on that like I just ended up stressing myself out to the point where I had to cry. And then I had to journal some things and to get it out of my system, because it was like stuff that like I was making up to stress myself out about. Like whether somebody was even going to pay me for something or whatever. It's like, yeah, that's not a concern here. I know from experience it's never been a problem. But suddenly my head's making up all these little problems. It's like, yeah, this is going to be like worse than that. It's like, no, we're not trying to completely spiral out here. Although it was working that way for a while. Yeah. I came over here and okay, we did a lot of this. Little Missy has lost her name tags. Although they're not actually lost. They're in the thing in the other room because she was chewing on them last night. They fell off of her collar. The ring they were on got jacked up, I think, with the outside leash and possibly the other leash. And fell off. So luckily they fell off on the blankets and we were able to find them because I just realized they were missing yesterday. So yeah. But yeah, she's been very clingy. And then I think it was yesterday I was on my way over here. Maybe the day before. My time's all running together. Day before yesterday I went to Greenwood for class. That was an adventure, or not for class, but to look at books. And I wanted to check in with the people that I normally see on Wednesday nights. So that was an adventure too. But yeah, the day before, I was on my way over here, and I just had this. Okay, I've talked sometime in the past few weeks about like some stress that I was feeling about the idea of being on a different timeline than my brother. And when I was on my way over here, it's like we've been on different timelines. We're moving in different directions, and I've talked about how I've had that sense for a long time that this wasn't his lifetime to wake up, right? So it's like, at first, okay, I feel like that's something that I've always had an awareness of in this lifetime. But I feel like when I started setting boundaries, which was December 2023, January 2024, it's when I was really starting to be aware of the fact that I needed to work on that. Then I really had the sense more then that, this wasn't the lifetime he was going to wake up. And I was like, but I've known that, haven't I? So it's like just this weird feeling of knowing something, but then, I don't know. Initially, I wasn't talking to him about anything I was doing either. So it's like the YouTube stuff, when I started that, I knew that if I started talking to him about it, because of our upbringing, he would have freaked out and started talking to our parents about it. It's like I wasn't ready for that by any means. Obviously, at this point, it's like we're a year and a half in on the thing, and they still don't know anything, and I would prefer that. Speak of the devil. I just got a message from my mom saying she fed the dogs. So yeah, but like, that's been a big part of it, is like I haven't, because they don't know I'm doing this thing where it's basically talk therapy, and I'm trying to unpack all the things that I've been just carrying my entire life and trying to make sense of them. And I've discovered it's largely toxic family stuff. That hasn't been something that I've wanted to share, right? So, another thing that I've been thinking about a lot lately, the sun. Should probably not sit right under this window, but here we are. Where was I going with that? Oh, I was thinking the other day with, just stuff I've been talking about in general. It's like, but people aren't going to be able to find my stuff if they aren't already on a similar frequency. And I've spent way too much time worrying about, my family finding this thing. And it's like, they won't be able to access it. Like, even, okay. I've talked a lot about the twin flame stuff on here, and how it's like there were a bunch of tarot readings that I was able to access before I was aware of this connection. After, it's like there was a little bit of a shift, and it's like different things opened up for me. And then as I've been, progressing with what I'm figuring out for myself, and having a better sense of awareness, I guess, for who I am, what I'm here to do, and, like the connections that I'm meant to have in my life. It's like different things it's like unlocking a different level, and there are certain times where it's like a noticeable shift, and of course, like with the twin flame thing, when that came up, one of the biggest ones, I've talked about how I was listening to his music kind of obsessively for a while. I mean, you're still pretty regularly, but when I first was listening to the music obsessively, I had this thought, and it was early on. It was like, this can't be healthy. It's like this, it feels obsessive, and then I ended up, it was like, as I have this thought, I'm kind of blindly scrolling on YouTube, and along comes this 444 white feather tarot reading as I just had this thought. And so I click on it, and when I watch it, one of the first things she says is, your guides are saying this. She said, you're worried, this feels obsessive. Your guides are saying it's not, and it has to be this way right now. It was just kind of like, obviously that's for me, because that's speaking exactly to this thought that was literally just in my head. And, beyond that, didn't come out my mouth or anything, that was in my head. And then along comes the algorithm presenting me with this thing, saying that, or speaking specifically to this point that I just was concerned about, and then there was the White Rose Guidance tarot reading that came up after that, and it was kind of a message from your person kind of a thing. And she had a card like from the specific deck that she was using, and it said flat out, listen to my music. And I was like, that's two things right in a row, right as I've had this thought. So clearly those are for me. And clearly I have to just accept where I'm at right now and roll with it. That's kind of been the biggest thing, is just trust the process, right? I get a lot of that message. Patience and trust the process. But since it was like right on point, it's like, okay, clearly this is for me, so I gotta go with it. Right, so how to get there? God. Oh man. I spent a lot of time trying to figure that out. I don't even know. So I'm going to go with the other thought that just popped up too. So this morning, I was getting ready to take my dogs on a walk, my three, and my aunt was going to go with us and take her little corgi pup. So I think I had just gotten them loaded in the... Actually, it was before I think I got them loaded in the car, and then I went back into my office for something. Anyway, I looked at my phone, and I had a message from that aunt's son, actually. And honestly, not the one I would have expected to hear this from. But as I've thought about it a little further, it actually makes more sense than any of the rest. Anyway, he sent me and the one cousin that does know about my YouTube thing. We're the three of us are a little bit of the wave makers in the family. I've talked a lot about being the black sheep, and this particular cousin. I have said many times that I was relieved when he was born, because it meant I wasn't at the shit end of the list by myself. And the other cousin has always been one of the grandparents' favorites, but okay. We're the ones that do the weird things, Okay, so I'm the one that started the tattoo thing, because, with me and my brother, he's now thinking about getting them, but previously he had no interest in getting tattoos. I was the one that started that, and I'm the only one that's got the facial piercings and all that fun stuff. And just bright and colorful in general. But then the cousin that sent me the message this morning, he's the one in the family that's gay, right? And I knew when he was born that he was going to be the one that was, which was also a big part of how I knew he was down there at the shit list with me. But then the other cousin, I think the snag for the family where she's concerned is she's, dating outside of the race. And so, yeah, that's kind of, and more so the religion. Although I will say, when I wore my non-servium shirt, they weren't happy. Of course, that's got the upside down cross on it. So they were not happy with that at all. But she's the one that's, we've all, at least most of us have at least met him at this point, because he did go to the other cousin's wedding, but he wasn't there very long. But it was still nice that everybody got to meet him. But, we're the three that do the things that kind of mess up the family illusion. So yeah, anyway, he sends us a message and asks if either of us were interested in our grandmother's house after she's gone, or after she's done with it. And he doesn't really know any of my stuff. Like, okay, the other cousin is aware of, like, the Philadelphia stuff that's come up, and that I'm interested in getting the fuck up out of here. So, the cousin who was inquiring about the house, his mom knows about the YouTube thing, but she's not going to tell anybody because she knows I'm not trying to get them involved with any of that stuff. So, she's interested, but not to the point of actually watching anything, because I don't want her to watch anything, because, she's very happy in her little, life where she goes to church and all is well. And, she's also one of those that, for the most part, is trying to, live as Jesus said to live, kind of a thing. Whereas there are others that, are not so much. And that's mainly, like my family, my grandmother, the ones I've had the biggest problems with along the way. But anyway, he asks us, and I was just like, nope. I said, well, I mean, you're definitely going to have to buy it off of the sisters and everything, but he said that he and his partner are, have apparently been talking about it, and they like the school district, and, my cousin said he as a garden instructor, he said he's worked for many other districts in the state, and they are not all equal. And he said he prefers the one that he went to over the ones that he's worked at to, have kids go to. So that's kind of where that came in at. So like, hey, go for it. I'm definitely not interested. But apparently he's been making the rounds, asking, the other cousin wasn't interested either. I was just like, my financial situation currently would not agree to that, but also I want out of this town. So, yeah. And the other one's just like, nope, not interested. Good luck. So, we'll see. And I said, like, the big thing is I feel like the sisters would probably be thrilled to death to keep it in the family. So, obviously they wouldn't go over there all the time or anything, but it's like, well, I mean, definitely be prepared to expect that somebody might drop in. Although I guess that'd be more with his parents that he would be right next door to than anybody else, but who knows? But it was just a weird thing that came up today. Then I go and pick up his mom, and while I have her in the car, her daughter calls. So this is, that cousin's sister. And she was asking all sorts of questions about it, and when she got off the phone, while they were talking, I don't even remember exactly what she said. What my aunt said, something to the effect of, she knows about it, and her sisters, I think, know about it, but she didn't think anybody else knew about it. And I was like, what about him wanting the house? And she said, yeah. I said, well, he sent me and Aaron a message earlier. And she said, oh. I said, but we both said we weren't interested. So, yeah. So just kind of interesting little thing how, like, all sorts of things are shifting now, and, yeah, starting with my brother looking at moving out of town, and now this cousin's looking at wanting to buy that house whenever our grandmother is done with it, and that's probably not too far off. I know the nursing home was not wanting her to leave the nursing home because she needs a little more attending. So, yeah, anyway, just weird things. Yesterday, last night's little blip Okay, so my mom's car needed gas. It was like a quarter of a tank. And I said, okay, well, I said, well, I want to go to the store, or that little shop that I said that I take my classes at. I said I've talked to a couple people about things in there that I want to reconnect with them on. I said I'll take it that way and then swing past Sam's Club. She gave me her Sam's card so I can go get her gas at Sam's Club because it's usually cheaper there, right? And it would have been cheaper there. Okay, anyway, we'll get to there in a second. So I got the card out of her purse and I put it in my little wallet thing. And I go to the store and I felt really strongly that I was supposed to go there last night. And of course I wanted to check in with the people, like I said, but also I've been getting these messages, okay, from that Animal Apothecary deck. I keep pulling this card that it talks about nourishment while waiting. And it's talking about baby hawk and, wanting to become big hawk, but until it gets to that point, he's got to have the nourishment while he's growing to get there, right? So it's talking about tune in to your higher self and figure out what skills your future self has that you do not currently possess, research and start practicing those. And then when you have have done that, then you've stepped into a higher level of yourself, right? So I keep getting this card. And I get other messages that are similar from like online things and whatnot. But I go in to the store and I one of the first, I went to the store. I go to the books, right? And one of the first ones that catches my attention, of course, is I've talked about palmistry recently, right? And just like the different lines on my hand, there was an app thing that popped up and I tried it just to see what it had to say. And the biggest thing it did, aside from provide one of those opportunities for something to dart in because I forgot to cancel it afterwards. So it took money out before I had the chance to cancel it, just because I wasn't paying attention. But anyway, that thing got me interested, and I was just interested in like the lines. It's like, okay, so what do they mean? What are these specific lines? Because I've been hearing things, so what are they actually for, right? So I tried the app and it didn't really work. It said like the line it said is the headline. It had the picture was a lot shorter than what the line actually is on my hand. So it's like, okay, well, that's not right. It's like some of the others, it's like, maybe. But it at least got my interest on finding out more about it. And I have one book that I got from Half Price Books a while back. But I feel like it feels overly complicated for what I was, trying to look up after I got that information. So when I was one of the first that I looked at the store, and it was just, it was one of those that's right at eye level, and, so I go in down this aisle, and then there it is. It's like, okay, well, so I start flipping through the book, and it's like, this book actually makes sense, and it's actually readable, right? So it's just like, I'm not saying that's what I'm going to do, like, lifelong or anything, but it's at least something that's got my interest at the moment. So what can I learn this way, right? So I started kind of reading through the book. I was sitting on the floor in this aisle. I thought they had an area that had a table and a couple chairs, but I couldn't find it. So I think whatever they had there got sold or whatever. But it's like, all right, well, I'm just going to go back to the books and sit on the floor. So go back to the books, sit on the floor, read through some of the books, and every now and then the guy that's working there comes in and check on me and all this stuff. And I asked if they had anybody there that was into the palm reading, and he said no. He said they used to have a lady. He said she was really good. She'd like get out a flashlight and be looking real close at everything. And he said she's in her 80s and retired. It's like, well, that's unfortunate. But, I started looking at the books, and he was like very encouraging of it. He said it's like a dying art. So, of course, he encourages anybody that's interested in random things to, kind of jump in and learn more about it. So, anyway, I read through that some, and then I end up finding this other book that's talking about, what does it say, psychic symbols and some kind of other things. I took pictures of everything, so I'd be able to refer back to it. But I did not go that far when I was looking through my pictures, thinking that I needed to write those down and delete them off of my phone before I hook my phone up to put the video on there later. But yeah, like when I was just reading the About Me section for the lady that wrote the next book, she was talking about, like, I think there was something with palmistry in there, but then she also mentioned reflexology, and then that started a thing. So then I'm looking at, I'm mainly read through what she was writing, and it's like, I like how she writes. This is structured where I think my brain can comprehend it. Whereas like the one book feels like there's a lot of good information in it, but it's more not as user friendly, maybe. And that could just be because I haven't looked that deeply into it. But still, hers was really easy to read. So it's like, okay, well, I should get this book at some point, but not today, because at the time I actually had negative 105 in the bank account. However, I had a couple bucks that I ended up taking that to the bank later. All right. Okay. Back on path. So I took a bunch of pictures of like these different books and was just kind of thinking through things. The big two things that I feel like I should look into at the moment are the palmistry and, more specifically, the reflexology. And it's, of course, I read that was one of the things that lady did. And it's like, wait, what is this? And then it's apparently, like the thing that, with, like you see the pictures and it has the different spots on like the feet that are associated with like the gallbladder, because that's a picture that I remember seeing, or the liver. There's like different areas on the hands or feet that are actually associated to different parts of the body. And it's like, okay, I want to learn more about this, which is weird in and of itself because feet kind of gross me out. So then I was thinking last night, it's like, this is stuff that I want to learn more about, but honestly, it's like, if I have a good group of friends, it wouldn't bother me. The idea of like practicing on family, that bothers me a lot. I've talked a lot about, and I don't like my family to touch me, and I don't want to touch them. And yeah. So it's like, okay, so I'm interested in this thing where ideally you would practice on somebody else. I mean, of course, I have my own hands and my own feet, so I might be able to figure some things out, but it's still probably not going to be exactly the same as, practicing on somebody else. But whatever, I deal with what I got while I got it, right? So while it's just me, myself, and I, we'll figure it out. But like those were the things that I was looking into. But when I did a Google search, then it came up with this like these online classes. It's like, ooh. And I found a couple teachers through this this thing that it's like, oh, okay, like one guy does Thai reflexology for the hands and the feet, and it had a little preview thing, and when I was watching the preview, it's like, this is somebody I can learn from. I don't know if he's like Australian or something, but he's like really upbeat and kind of bubbly, and just the way he was talking about everything, it's like, this, I feel like this makes sense. This is somebody I can learn from, and there was I went through like 4 different previews on the palmistry stuff, and the first one was okay, a little slow, and then there were a couple that, okay, there was one guy that had a ton of information, but it's like, I feel like this is beyond my capacity to understand. right? So it's like, this is a lot of good educational information, but there's a lot of information and it doesn't feel like he brings it home from these previews, right? So it's like, I don't know that I'll be able to make sense of it this way. And then the other one was a little bit better on that end, but didn't have hardly any like examples or like pictures of the lines he's talking about for the hands and whatnot. I was like, I'm gonna need to see it. I can't just hear about it and get it, especially when it's like people that are teaching off of a PowerPoint and you're watching the PowerPoint the whole time and there's nobody else to look at. So they're not holding up their hands or anything. It's just whatever's on the PowerPoint is what you get. So, yeah, I can't learn like that. And then the fourth one I came across was this lady who I think she said she studied with somebody who was from Australia. And she even gave it the name, but it's like, I don't know who that is, but I already know that I can understand what you're talking about better. And then she showed pictures and it's like, okay, so this makes more sense too. And she had like the diagrams that she's using for, okay, so apparently there's like different elements associated with different hand types, and she's talking about the earth hand, the fire hand, the water hand, and the air hand. And when she had just the drawings, it's like, I kind of see what she's talking about, like as far as length of fingers to length of palm and whatnot. The earth hand was really easy to tell because she's talking about, it's a lot more solid, shorter fingers and wider and, looks like a working hand. But then, like the pictures that she had for that section, it's like, I can't tell if I'm a fire hand or a water hand. But then the next picture that she showed, it's like, okay, now I'm seeing water, right? But just from like the shape of it before, I wasn't sure on fire. And apparently those two are easy to mix up. So I don't feel bad on that end either, because it's like, as I'm going back and forth between these two things, and then she actually addresses that, it's like, hey, okay, I feel like this is somebody I can learn from. And they were like all discounted, but of course, when you have negative $5 in the bank account, that's not going to cut it. So, okay, that was while I was over here at my brother's. Let's go back to the store, where I've taken pictures of all of these books, and then, I'm trying to figure out things that I feel would be useful to learn more about, right, for me. And I realized the class has ended, and, my mom was thinking that Sam's gas station closed at 8, so I was just going to leave before then rather than look it up. I should have looked it up before I left the store because they didn't close till 10, but I'm glad I wasn't driving around past then anyway. But anyway, so I leave the store, it's like 7:45, and I go over to Sam's Club. This is like 15-minute drive from the store. I get there, and I put the card in the thing just for it to say it won't accept that card. It's like, son of a bitch, I grabbed the wrong card. But no worries, I have less than a quarter of a tank of gas, right? So we'll see how far we can stretch this thing. On the way back, I gotta go home, get the right card before I can fill up the gas tank. Not going back to Sam's Club because that's, way too, it's like a 35-minute, Sam's Club, probably 30-minute drive from our house. And yeah, so I wasn't going back there. I was just going to go to the one in town, or one of the ones in town. And so on the way, it's like, all right, I have a couple bucks. I need to run to the bank and put this in my account to keep it from, costing me $37 and another trip back to the bank to talk to the lady about getting it switched. So I go to do that. The problem with that plan was there's not a way that's really straightforward over to the bank. The bank, yes, they do have a PNC in Greenwood, However, the one that I've ended up at doesn't have the means for taking deposits, apparently. And it's like, okay, well, this is fucked up. So the ones that I know will take it are, the ones closer to my house. So I was going to go to this one. There's a road that would ideally put me closest to going straight through. And it turns and splits off to become this other road, and the sign was all jacked up, and it's been so long since I've taken that route. The last time I went that way, I fucked it up too. So I fucked it up this time again and end up going like 15 minutes out of my way because I'm trying to I go like further west than I need to because I'm trying to go back east, but I'm also trying to go north and end up west. It's like, son of a bitch. And then I end up on these roads that don't go all the way through to anything, and nothing's familiar until I get to this one, which is like Southeastern Avenue, which does not, I think it goes northwest to southeast. So it's like one of those, it's awkwardly angled. And where I came to it had I couldn't just go straight, right? Because there was like a building and the traffic going this way did not stop. And then there was this building, and then the traffic coming the other way also didn't stop. But, it was, how do I get the fuck around this building as well in order to go the way that I thought I wanted to go? It's like, So I had to go the other way. So I end up, going further out of my way, and it's all sorts of fucked up. And I'm thinking, how many miles to empty do I have on this thing? And of course, I started messing with the buttons, and I did get it to where it told me the miles that I had left on the tank. I had plenty. We were good. But by the time I got to the bank, it was under 50 miles till empty. And I discovered that on that car, it turns bright orange when you're under, or that close to empty. So, I mean, nice little feature to have, I guess, but just like, okay, well, that's cool. But yeah, anyway, I got the $2 in the bank. So now it kept me from an overdraft fee, and I currently have 95 cents in the bank. Go me. But yeah. So I go, of course, traffic, right? I mean, not the traffic. The roads are ridiculous because our road, okay, if I just went east on the road that the bank is off of, I would have gotten to our road. The problem is the crossroad right before our house is currently closed because they're putting in a roundabout. So that's not an option. So then I gotta go all the way. I gotta go south to go back around to get to my house. And, I got there and it was all fine. I was like, well. So I go and it's like, yeah, I definitely got the wrong card. And, they kind of laugh at me. So it's fine. I went when I got the other card, and when I went to my brother's house, I stopped at the other gas station, and it wasn't as cheap, but it still saved us a nickel to the gallon because of my Speedway card. So at least there's that, but it's just a pain in the ass. But just like all these little things, it's like earlier in the week, that kind of an ordeal, that was knocking me off balance easy, right? So it's just like these little things getting in the way and making this a bigger deal than it should be. And it's just like these little things just keep bumping. Yeah, okay. I've talked about following the whims and going places that I, okay, the other day I was going to the cemetery to walk the dogs, and then, I was getting ready to turn south, but I was going on the road going east, and then a cop coming on the same road from the west turned to go south before I got there. And he went past the school and was down by the cemetery. And it's like, I'm confident he's not going to the cemetery. But that was enough to make me think, hey, here's the school. There's not a whole lot of people over here. So I went that way instead, right? So following the whims, I end up walking my dogs around the baseball diamonds at the high school. And that was the day that, I started thinking, okay, Ziva pooped. I bagged it up. And I was thinking, there's a trash bag or a trash can on the set of bleachers, but it's like 50 feet out of the way. Or I could just continue around, and I know there's going to be another couple trash cans over closer to the tennis courts. But for whatever reason, I felt like going to that one. It's like, it's no big deal. It's right here, and why not? So I went over there, and that was the day that I hear cooing in the trash can, and then end up tying the dogs to the bottom railing of the bleachers and going over and realizing there's baby raccoons stuck in the trash can. And I wouldn't have found them had it not been for just following the whims, right? And helping them out of that situation. So that was something that was kind of neat. And for all like the series of discouragements that I had kept coming my way. And then it was kind of funny because I watched this Regida Shaman video. There's something with the twin flame connection. She's talking about she said if you start hitting a lot of blocks, she said, that's a good thing because it means you're ascending. It's like, So that day it was the day after everything was kind of going wrong. So like, okay, I knew it was July 1st, right? So I had gotten to the bank to put the money in before the $2 was a problem because that was, to make the, to put another 20 in to be able to pay my freaking storage unit it was 80 cents short for. So when I had got that handled, and then that was the day I was walking the dogs and found the raccoon, right? So then I watched this Regida Shaman video, and she's talking about this is a good thing if you start encountering a bunch of blocks. She says that means you're ascending, right? So then while I was over here, after I had walked my brother's dogs, because I walked mine first, and then I don't remember where we walked that day. Usually we've been walking at the middle school that's closer or easier to get to from my brother's house. It's a little closer. It's not much. But we usually go over there. Anyway, that's irrelevant. That's completely irrelevant. Because the point was, I'd already walked these guys, and we were back here hanging out. And I was blindly scrolling on Instagram, distracting myself because I was so irritated at everything. And I come across this page. It's that Oracle guy. And I don't always watch his videos, but that day I hesitated enough because I saw a little blurb at the bottom of it, and something he said, when I clicked on it to show what the rest of it was, it said something about snap out of it, and I was like, I feel like that's for me. And like what he was talking about was like basically what was going on, which is like all the things that feel like they're going wrong and how it's not really going wrong, and like he's talking about adjusting your attitude kind of a thing. It's like, oh hey, I guess I was meant to find this because I kind of need that right now. So yeah, anyway, I feel like this is just a whole complicated mess today. But yeah, it's like everything was relevant and everything kept saying you're exactly where you're supposed to be, right? And don't quit. And it's basically, this is part of the process for purging out, like the bad stuff. Like, are you going to shift back to the old behaviors, running and hiding like I would have done every other time? Or are you going to push through it and, get to the other side of it on that? And so like, well, fuck, I guess that's my only real option. So obviously, hiding out has never worked for me, and I'm really not into a life that keeps me living with my parents any longer than I absolutely have to at this point. Which I'm so ready for that to be done too. Which, there again, this is one of those things like, okay, I feel and have long felt like I've been blocked from everything working out in my lifetime because there's so much of this like other bullshit that I have to get through first. Of course, talked about like the relationship side of things. That's always been less than ideal, which was the reason that I decided to commit my love and career lives over to the universe. Starting with the love life, because, that was the big thing. I had 3 serious relationships in my life, and, the first 2 were, okay, the first one, it was okay, but I knew it wasn't what I was looking for. So I tried to break up with him, and then like life kept telling me that wasn't a safe idea, and I was better off staying there for the time being. Because of course the bullies at school and whatnot, at least he was a friend that knew about like the suicidal ideation and all that stuff. So he was at least somebody I could trust, and a good friend for the time being. It's like I knew it wasn't the one, but at the same time, it was at least safe for the time, right? So then the next one, we were very solidly together for 4 years. That one we broke up. For an hour, for a day, and for a month. And then the last time we broke up was 2 years later, and it was after I'd given up on all of that because, it's like, I know he's not the one, but he's at least safe for right now. So then when I finally got around to the last breakup, it was the one that was official. But I had to be okay with him being or having something else lined up immediately afterwards to disconnect further, so that wasn't even an option to go back, right? So when things got scary, that was off the table completely already. And I've talked about that in other videos, so I'm going to skip that here. But, the next one, we were together solidly for 4 years. Thought I was going to marry him. Didn't work out that way. And then kind of sent me on a downward spiral that ended up with me ending up with the guy I did marry. And that was a hot mess. And, not good. But the purpose of it was to show me how somebody gets into a relationship like that and why it's so hard to get out of it. And that's going back to that point of why when I was getting divorced from my ex, I also had to divorce my entire belief system, right? So, and to make it a safe space to do the biggest thing with that was like, hi. I realized that the church beliefs that I had picked up along the way were the biggest thing keeping me stuck in a toxic relationship, right? And then as I realized that was the case, because then you hear all the things about, wives are supposed to submit to their husbands, but it doesn't take into consideration the fact that, or the times when the husbands don't give a shit about the wives and are not decent people and all that stuff. So what? She wants to hold hands. We're just gonna hold hands. Yeah. Anyway. So then, in the deconstruction of how I got into that situation altogether, came back to family stuff, right? So this whole YouTube thing, which I only started because, because of that whole twin flame thing. When I turned my love and career lives over to the universe, then I'm pointed in the direction of who he is, and then I realized that he had to be in some kind of spotlight for me to find him, but then how was he ever going to find me? And then, start the channel and start processing through the junk keeping me stuck, and a lot of it being toxic family stuff that was also largely very strongly wrapped up in toxic belief systems, and all that fun stuff. So as I started talking through stuff on here and finally unpacking it and setting it down, then it, opened me up to getting to know myself better, for one. That's been huge. But also trying to figure out what I came here to do in this lifetime. And, I've definitely been doing that stuff. How did I get there? India distracted me. She was just staring at me like, so? It's just like you weren't handling it before either, so. Yeah. Oh, don't lick my ring. Yeah, and I've unpacked a whole bunch of shit on here, and I feel like that's been very important and necessary, and is exactly what I was supposed to be doing. And going back to that point where, I've talked a lot on here about feeling the energetic agreement, like between my mother and my grandfather, and knowing, like from my grandfather's perspective, I was the one that was here to destroy the illusion, and from his standpoint, I had to be stopped, right? So then I became the scapegoat as a means of them making me stop or preventing me from ruining their illusion, which, I'd say I pretty solidly handled in this whole YouTube thing, even though most of them don't know about it yet. And now trying to figure out what I want to do, and, who I want to be in this space, and, what I came here to do, and, like following the whims again. I felt very strongly that I was supposed to go to that little store last night, but not for the sake of going to class, and then I did get a couple ideas of things that I'm interested in looking more into. What that's going to look like, I don't know. If they still have those classes on their sale, that, because it was like 72% off on the different things. So like one class I think was originally like $67, but it was marked down to $16.99 for the time being. And of course that said this price for 4 hours. It was like, well, we'll see what it looks like after I get paid, because that'll be in the next few days. But yeah. Y'all. Oh. Wonder if she needs her anal glands drained. That's not my department. Because I've been talking about how this dog wipes her butt on the wall currently and then goes behind and sniffs it. She just did that again. So, yeah. Anyway, that's a weird thing she does. I have to tell my brother to to do something about that, because that sounds like not my department. But yeah. So I feel like I'm getting further directed where I'm meant to be going, and also like seeing these things that, okay, I feel like I've heard a lot about using the roadblocks as stepping stones, and I feel like that's kind of where I'm at. So like there's these things that keep coming up, causing, little tedious conflicts in the way things are happening in my life. So then it's like the universe is like testing me with those to see what I'm going to do, and am I going to keep pushing through, or is it going to be the thing that causes me to crumble and go back to the old ways of being. And I'm pretty confident we're not. We've come too far to be able to do that. I mean, I couldn't do that happily anyway. And even if I could, it wouldn't be for very long. But then, like, seeing these little obstacles as opportunities to do things differently than I otherwise would have. Yeah. Like when I got cut off the other day getting in line, it's like, I was just going to go through the drive-thru. It's like, fuck it. You know what? I'm going to go around and I'll just go inside. Had the dogs in the car, but, left the car running. It's an old piece of crap car. I'm pretty sure nobody's going to want to steal that one. But it's like, it'll be fine. And, I ran in and there was like a guy there that was finishing up at the ATM right inside the door. So it's like, I ended up being done before the car so there was a car ahead of me that came in from a different angle, and the reason I was over enough that the other car could cut me off was to let that guy know that I was going to let him go ahead of me, because I saw that he was there, and I thought that was a dick move to just cut him off because he's not in the line enough, right? And then I got cut off because I wasn't in the line enough. So, but I ended up, I would go into the inside ATM, right inside the first set of doors. I discovered a while back that they have the main doors locked going into the bank, but then they leave the outdoors locked, or outer doors locked or unlocked, so you can go to that ATM if there's a problem with the other one overnight. So that's where I was, in between the doors. And it was fine. And I got done before that guy. He came around, I think, right as I made it back to the car and was getting in. I saw him go past. So, yeah. So I was still done before the asshole who cut me off anyway. But yeah, there's like opportunities to regroup and continue on. And is this going to throw you completely off, or are you going to get your shit together and do it better? And I feel like we've been doing well on that, getting my shit together a little bit, and at least not crumbling when things go wrong. Even though, like yesterday felt more like the version of me that I've become, right? So the things earlier in the week, it was like old me would have like completely crumbled and like quit and like gone back into hiding. And I was like, nope, we're still moving. And then yesterday's stuff, it's like it was tedious and kind of annoying. But then also I was, paying attention to how many miles I had left on the tank. And it was like, are we going to make this? And it ended up being fine. But I was more laid back about it at that point. So it's like, that's a much better approach for me anyway. But that's all because of the growth I've been doing and whatnot. So I don't know. Oh, here's a fun thing. So I have talked a lot on here about my room's so freaking hot at night, and it's 2 different rooms now that I've tried. My brother's room, which is my current office, when we were growing up, that always used to be like the coldest room in the house, right? And my room was always the hottest room in the house. Or it was the hottest in the summer and the coldest in the winter. It's like the vent just doesn't push enough in my, that end of the house, right? So, and my mom's room's across the hall, so it's like they haven't had issues, but mine, being on the southeast corner, has always been a problem. So, my brother's room, he hadn't lived there in years. He did have a time where he and his wife lived there very briefly when they were working on buying a house up here the first time. But now they're vacating again. So, yeah. But anyway, when I moved back, getting the divorce, I went back into my room, but I had like all these birds and a whole bunch of bird cages, and it was like, I mean, walls closing in ridiculously because there's furniture in front of furniture and like all these storage totes and all this shit, and it's like I have too much stuff to be in one room. Eventually, my mom said if I cleared out my brother's old room, I could have it too. So I ended up with 2 rooms, and one's the bedroom, one's the office. And for a while, it was the other way, and my brother's old room was my bedroom. Well, it was really freaking hot in there. There's only one window, and the fan has always been like really good, but for whatever reason, I was still like waking up and it was like 75 in there. It's like, this is ridiculous. I don't sleep good in this. Honestly, I think my mom always wants to blame the dogs, and for a while we were wondering if maybe part of it was due to the carpet. Okay. When they got new carpet in that room, the door went back on, and it's like really hard. It was really hard to open and close initially because there's like no airflow under there. And my dad was always supposed to cut a little bit off at the bottom and never did, right? So it's like always been a thing. But whatever. So I decided it was the winter when I switched it. We were gonna see if that worked. It didn't. And of course, now that we like bypassed spring and jumped straight into summer, I think, because it just like was hella hot pretty quick. Anyway, last night I had 7 fans going. And okay, so when I was in my brother's old room, it was like 75 degrees in there. Now it's like 70. I mean, it did get above that. That was usually the average. Usually it would be somewhere like, or it has gotten up to 78. But now 77's pretty consistent when I wake up. So it's kind of a pain in the ass. I had mentioned, or I had asked my parents what they thought if I got myself a little window AC. And my dad was concerned about the energy use or whatever, and if it would make the electric bill go up or whatever. So they didn't want to do that. It's like, really, would that really be more than 7 fans? Apparently my aunt has one from my cousin that's wanting or inquiring about my grandmother's house. So she's gonna let me have that one. So it's like, woo, yay, go me. But yeah, I had 7 fans going last night, and it was still 77 this morning. It's like, cool. And my mom still wants to blame the dogs, and honestly, I'm pretty sure this is just me running energy through my system overnight, and it gets really hella hot. And I feel like that's something that I've always done, which is partly why it was so hot when I was growing up in there. Because, back to that transmutation point where I feel like I absorb the dense energies from the environment around me, and then I got to clear them out some way. And I think part of that is, processes that out while I'm sleeping. But yeah. You got a potty. Is that your problem? I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up and let these dogs out and then call it a day. So as always, I appreciate you. Until the next time. See ya.